have no great, we don't think of nuclear weapons in terms of dealing with our domestic problems or in terms of dealing with even security problems, even international security problems. So in a sense, it's a very limited view of nuclear weapons that we have, very limited sort of purpose that we have for our nuclear weapons. But we're also worried in a sense, and we're also, despite the fact that we didn't sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty in the late 60s, or haven't signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, we have always been very anti-proliferation. We have accepted the notion that the spread of weapons is bad for us. That if more and more countries have nuclear weapons, it's not necessarily good for us. So it is not. So in a sense, one of the dilemmas that we face is that even though we support the idea of non-proliferation, we are not members of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And so, how do we support that notion of non-proliferation without supporting the treaty? And that problem has been with us since the late 60s, because again, as I said right in the beginning, because we didn't sign because we didn't test the weapon in the 1960s. If we had done that, we would have been within the NPT system, and we would have been, we would have been sort of dealing with it much more careful, much more helpful. So in a sense, we had to do things like the US Indian nuclear deal, because we needed to sort of find a via media between us and the non-proliferation system, the non-proliferation regime, because that matters. I mean, all the things that Dr. Siddharth and Dr. Srivastava mentioned earlier, a lot of those agreements of a different period affect us directly. Dr. Siddharth has been at the forefront of the fact of those issues. Export control regulations is one of the most serious impediments to our scientific advance, because every time we have to, I don't know if it's still there, but earlier, I was in the US in the 1990s, all the Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Office CDs used to come with this tag on it saying, it's not to be exported. You couldn't even buy safety pins if the purchaser was the BAE or the DRDO or whatever, I mean, one of our scientific institutes. So in a sense, all of those export control laws which were based whose roots were in the Non-Proliferation Treaty affected us. But now, in a sense, we are slowly coming out of that because of the nuclear deal, and because the threats have also slightly changed, because nuclear terrorism is a threat, and therefore 1540 and others are things that we could cooperate with. Proliferation Security Initiative and the Container Security Initiative and so on are things that we could cooperate with. But we are also going to be facing a number of other additional issues in the next few years. One of that CTBT, all of you are familiar with. The CTBT, CTBT is essentially designed to prevent all forms of testing, but there have been previous legislation which have banned some types of testing. For example, in the 1950s, all the countries that had nuclear weapons at that point of time used to test weapons in the atmosphere. I mean, they used to conduct open air testing, which is now banned. We have treaties that ban testing of weapons underwater. We have treaties that ban testing of weapons on outer space. We have treaties that ban weapons testing above a certain limit. I mean, I think 150 kilograms, I think, is the outer limit that we can test. But now the idea is that we ban all tests as a way of, again, preventing other countries from acquiring nuclear weapons. We have had difficulties. Again, it goes back to the original problem of why we didn't test earlier. I mean, we had finished our testing before 1996, as indeed a lot of Indian policy analysts suggested when the CTBT was being negotiated. Then again, we could have joined the CTBT without serious problems. But now, because we didn't, and because we conducted only 5 or 6 tests as compared to, let's say, the Chinese have tested almost 50 tests, and the Americans and the Russians have done now over 1,000 tests. So in a sense, we feel reluctant to get into the sign that treaty. But that might come. That treaty might have, might again become a serious problem over the next couple of years if the U.S. Senate, which has so far not ratified the treaty, on the American side, ratifies it. Because once the U.S. ratifies it, then obviously, if the U.S. ratifies it, I should say, then the pressure on us to sign and ratify the treaty will also be quite great. There's another treaty that we're facing, which is the Fissile Mutual Control Cutoff Treaty, which is designed again as a non-proliferation measure to prevent other countries from acquiring nuclear weapons. The logic of that is the assumption that to build nuclear weapons, you need fissile material. The core of a weapon, of a nuclear weapon, is fissile material. And so if you can stop producing that, then that would prevent countries from acquiring, additional countries from acquiring nuclear weapons. There is the whole controversy going on about Iran, as you know, currently, which is again about the same issue. But a general treaty banning all production of fissile material is something that is also in the works, but which hasn't so far happened because of various disagreements, including the scope of the treaty and so on. But with something that we need to worry about, because it might be something that we might face in the near future. Let me stop here. There are lots of other things, but probably can at least have some time for discussing that.
Indeed. Please join me in thanking both the speakers for framing these issues. I'll just open the discussion by saying that in what you've heard so far, one of the other aspects that came across as Dr. Rajagopalan was speaking is that formal membership and procedural types of membership issues are favored over substantive issues like compliance. What India has done in the last 40 years is demonstrated that it's not just the act of signing onto a regime that matters. What matters is our record of how we behave. And so, insofar as we are a very responsible manager of everything we produce.
There is one thing that everybody has missed up to now. All government activity, legislation up to now has never touched the issue. The government, by its loose behavior, has made women available for crime. You know, which up to now, India being a conservative country, with strong religious doctrines, women were kept shaded. Women moved around. Women participated in the independence movement. But Indian legislation and Indian government behavior never forced women to enter the terrorist. What India is doing at present is making Indian women freely available to terrorist activities. They may not want to, but they are being dragged into it, so I feel.
With all due respect, that is not the focus of our discussion, but I work with this government very closely on joint working groups on counterterrorism and other issues, and I can assure you that there is absolutely no substantive basis to the fact that it's women who are entering into the Indian terrorism groups. I can.
No, that I just thought, since there are people here who are in touch with these people, you might have
quite,
strong feelings about it. Society deteriorates when you let it deteriorate.
I'm quite aware of our work on counterterrorism, including the numbers of which entities and which individuals are coming into this, and I can assure you that is in fact not the case. It is not Indian women who are joining in large numbers.
No, we don't want to join, and we not with society.
No, I'm saying the state is neither doing it nor is that happening, so let's move on to other questions.
May I
would like us to Yes, please.
With your kind permission, sir, I'm very thankful for the dynamic view by Dr. Siddharth and the static view taken by Professor Rajagopalan on the topic of the day. I understand because I have got that. It's not working.
It is working. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So coming back to this point, sir, the topic is international law and global efforts to combat threats, strengthening the linkage. So here, sir, I got two questions for Dr. Siddharth. The first is there any specific relationship to UNSCR 1540? Does it make any specific provision for preventing a preemptive nuclear strike by any of the member nations? Number one, sir. And number two, as the person authoring the first book on anti-money laundering law in the country, I feel that definitely you should personally take cognizance of the necessity to link up a provision in the WMD Act, finally when it comes into force, and any other related acts which speak of nuclear armament, disarmament, monitoring, stock, trade, commerce, etc. Because money is invariably linked to that. To link it up to prosecution or being tried, any person who is accused should also provide a declaration, because we do not have a pre-bargaining position of law in this country. So keeping that in view, kindly ensure that we have a linkage between this enactment and that enactment, which ultimately will help prevent terrorist financing and terrorist acts by rogue nations and internal terrorists within the country.
I will add one more thing, sir. As far as plea bargaining is concerned, the offences relating to the terrorism are not covered in India.
Explain that.
Yes,
what do you mean?
recently there is amendment in CRPC about the plea bargaining. Okay. There is amendment in CRPC, criminal procedure.
Yes, I know.
The plea bargaining concept has been introduced in India. But the offences against the nation, against the security of the nations are not there for the purposes of plea bargaining. Because in plea bargaining there is a chance to reduce the punishment.
Correct.
So whether that issue is also taken up by other countries?
No, are you discussing sedition and acts of a certain nature that are not subject to plea bargaining, or are you talking about?
I say that the offences relating to terrorism should not be subjected to plea bargaining.
Fine. You are stating your opinion that it should not be.
Any country, whatsoever.
But they are not. They
In fact, even otherwise, only those offences are covered by plea bargaining for which the maximum prescribed punishment is 7 years.
7 years.
Only those offences.
Those offences.
Yes. So, a question of including these terrorist acts in the plea bargaining does not arise.
You want to respond? Yeah.
No,
I'm making it.
Dr. Siddhartha said that there is a plea bargaining, that is not asking.
No.
Let's look.
I didn't say. No, I think that I've been misunderstood. What I'm saying is that this is to do with trade.
Yeah.
First of all, not to do with terrorism.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about trade law. We're talking about trade law where I'm asking the question, I'm not even saying that in the event, as in the United States, in the event that you have a double reversal, so to speak, it is then possible, there's got nothing to do with an act already committed in terms of terrorism. It is possible to use this as a mechanism of doing two things. One, of reducing the extent of litigation in the courts.
That is the object.
Then second, more importantly, to enable intelligence to be garnered. I'm not suggesting that anybody is going to be tortured for the purpose. I'm only saying that you're going to get intelligence with regard to the routes that have been taken, so that other people who are involved in the exercise of smuggling and so on and so forth can also be targeted from those who have been engaged in this as a process of bargaining that plea.
And my saying is that those who are manufacturing the hazardous weapons, chemicals, weapons, I think they should not be subjected to plea bargaining.
No, we're not talking about chemical weapons. We're talking
Because otherwise we are just making.
I think the point's been made.
Point taken. Yeah. Understood. Yeah. Sorry, you asked a question.
About jurisdiction.
Sir, about whether the UN Security Resolution 1540, does it provide for any manner of preventing a preemptive strike?
No. This has nothing to do with nuclear weapon operations by states.
Right.
This is directed
For trade?
this is directed at non-state actors having access to weapons of mass destruction, their means of delivery of components and subsystems or raw materials for them.
Yes, sir.
It's nothing to do with the operations of states.
But they'll be invariably be monitored by the state concerned.
They have to be. That's the purpose of this.
And there we're going to link up all the laws.
It should be, yeah. And somebody asked a question, you asked a question about,
Money laundering.
about money laundering. Yes, there is. Now, this whole issue of money laundering is already there, but it's linked up with amendments of the money laundering business. I'm not aware of that right now.
Yes.
But in the subordinate legislation, there is a provision under the WMD Act, first of all, about it overriding the other acts. Whether it could be prospective, I don't know. These are highly legalities, which I'm not an expert at all in that. But certainly the money aspect is that, because for the simple reason that 1540 requires controls also over the financing of activities which contribute to proliferation. That's the reason why you have that connection.
Yes, and that is why, even with Iran, you will see Resolution 1737, 1747, 1803, they are all tightening the financial side of it. So you should not only be seen as abetting the technological capability, but also the financial capability. So brokers, facilitators, banks, all of those things.
So we need to link up the laws.
They are getting linked. I mean,
We need to link up the provisions. A specific provision there is necessary.
I do want Rajesh to respond, but we'll then have to get into legal assistance treaties, extradition treaties,
Right.
and things
So
like that.
so we're just trying to bring it to your notice because you're in positions of power.
We're not.
Advisory position.
We're only draft animals. We don't.
Yes, sir. You can always it's food for thought for the security of the country. Thank you.
One of the reasons for the WMD Act, like I said, he was there at the framing of it, there at the creation, as it were. But one of the reasons for the WMD Act is because the 1540 links all of these issues up. But our legislation, in fact, our first submission to 1540 committee was all of this list of all of these acts. And so one of the purpose of